So now that you know why I'm here, the more important question is, why are you here? And allow me to answer that for you. I'm not so delusional that I think that you saw my name on a schedule and thought, I need to take a class at David Park. You're here because you want to get a college degree. And in order to get that degree, you need to take this class. And that is an excellent reason for you to be here. Higher education and education in general, at all levels, is going through one of the most difficult periods in U.S. history in terms of funding being cut and just the whole system being upended. There is a lot of criticism about higher education, and I can criticize higher education as well as anyone. However, the data is pretty clear. The higher the level of degree, the more an individual will make over the course of their lifetime. And when there's an economic downturn, the less likely it is they will be unemployed. This is for 2021, and the data just keeps getting more and more stark. A college degree is worth it over the long term. Now, with AI, that is changing because there are some degrees that are not going to be profitable. So there are some big asterisks. But overall, a college degree is still, over the course of the lifetime, a good investment. So that is a wonderful reason to be here. But there's a bigger question. Why is history mandatory? Why do you have to take history in order to get your degree? The answer you'll usually hear, and what many of you are thinking, is we study history, you have to take history, because we need to learn from the past so we don't repeat it. And I can say with absolute certainty, we never learn from the past. My area of history that I've done the most work on is economic collapses. And we never learn from the past. It's not in humans' character. Definitely is not in Americans' character. In order to learn from the past, we would have to question our views in the present. And we just don't like to do that. So we never learn from the past. If we do, it's only for a couple decades. And then we just conveniently forget it all. So that's not a good answer. A better answer is because we want to live in a society, a functional society with the rule of law. There's a reason history is in the humanities, is because it's supposed to make us better individuals, better citizens. And as better citizens, we will make better choices for the nation. There is no such thing as a democratic government, democratic nation that lasts long term, that doesn't have a increasing level of education, where education is valued. It cannot exist. If people are going to have a say in the government, they need to be educated. There's a very good reason in countries that are taken over by dictatorships like Russia, and there are several in the world right now. One of the first things they do is cut education, because you do not want a citizenry that is educated if they're going to be subjugated. That's why many states that had slavery forbid slaves from being taught how to read. The most famous slave revolt in U.S. history, Nat Turner's Rebellion, was arguably caused because a slave was taught how to read the Bible and then started preaching the Bible. And so after that, Southern states, they explicitly forbade slave owners from teaching their slaves how to read, because then it gives them ideas, it gives them thoughts. And you do not want that if you are going to control the population. So that's a very good reason to study history, so you can see what it looks like when a population is kept ignorant, and the history of education and how important it is for any functioning democracy. That is on a societal level, why it's important. On an individual level, it will help you become a more critical thinker. That is one of the key things about history is, in order to be a good historian, you have to use logic. Logic is formulaic reasoning. A plus B plus C equals D. And historians tend to be good at this because if you're looking at history, you have to put all these pieces of information together to get to your conclusion. That's what logic is. And in this class, we will do a lot of it. From the very first lectures, you will get information that we will refer back to in the second, third, fourth, fifth lecture, all the way to the very last lecture. So there will be themes and ideas that will be stretching all throughout the entire course. And for some of the assignments, you will have to use logic. You will have to put pieces of information together to come to your own conclusion. But you need to have the data, you need to have the facts to reach your conclusion. So historians, they tend to be good at this. And it works that muscle in the brain. And it's something that I especially put a lot of emphasis on, finding patterns that repeat over time. So it'll make you a more logical person. But I'll give you an even more practical reason why you want to be in this course. I am very big into understanding the why. Why is this important? Why is history important? One of the biggest complaints students have about history, besides the fact that their teacher in high school was a football coach, is that they don't understand why they need to know names and dates. And that is an excellent criticism of history because it really doesn't matter most of the time. To know the exact day something happened, even the exact year, it doesn't usually matter more than why the event matters. The why is more important than the when. And so we will focus on that. You need to know the who, what, when, where, but the why is what's so important. And when you look at the why, that's when you understand why this is so relevant to your life and to you understanding yourself. Because we are all, every one of us, a creature of our environment. We are shaped by our environment. We are shaped by our culture. Culture is a kind of a nebulous word that encompasses a nation's temperament, attitude, language. Language is a reflection of that. And all these other things that are hard to define. But in order to understand the United States, in order to understand yourself, you need to understand the culture of the United States. And we have a very interesting culture here in the U.S. There's a concept that summarizes it very well, that is incredibly misunderstood, and that is American exceptionalism. American exceptionalism is the idea that America is exceptional, obviously. And this concept gets misunderstood all the time on the political left. A lot of people say the United States is not exceptional, or that it's exceptional in the same way every single country in the world is exceptional. On the political right, a lot of people say America is exceptional in that we are better and we are superior. Both of those are incorrect. There are too many examples, too many statistics, too much data that shows the United States is, in fact, exceptional. However, in the neurodivergent community, especially among people that are autistic, there's something called twice exceptional. Twice exceptional is when you are really good at one thing and then just absolutely terrible at other areas, like abnormally bad in other areas. That is what the United States is. That is what American exceptionalism is. The United States, it is exceptional. It is undeniably exceptional in a lot of ways. But that does not mean it's better. And let me tell you what I mean. The United States is somewhere in the neighborhood of, has about 340 million people in it. That is about 4% of the world's population. That's it. The United States has just 4% of the world's population. And yet, somehow, we have the biggest economy. We are the most wealthy nation in human history. We account for somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think right now it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 37% of all the world's GDP. And so 4% of the world's population controls somewhere around a little under 40% of the entire globe's GDP. That is insane when you really think about it. We also, in the United States, account for the vast, the largest military expenditures of any country in the world by far. And it is not even close. The United States military expenditures are somewhere in the neighborhood of also 38%, which is just massive. The United States spends more on the military than the next 11 or 12 countries combined. And 9 of those are allies to the United States. Now, those numbers are changing very quick because the United States is pulling back on military spending, and other nations are greatly ramping up their military spendings. Partly because the United States is insisting, but also because we are seeing more wars breaking out in 2024 and 2025 than we've seen since 1946. So we are seeing a record amount of new wars breaking out all over the world. And so other countries are spending more and more. So that military expenditures numbers are going to be adjusting. But still, the United States, since 1945, military expenditures have just been the largest in the world. And it has just been, the gap between the U.S. and other nations has been incredibly massive, especially since the collapse of the Soviet Union in the late 1980s. The United States also is the most philanthropic country in human history. Because we're so rich, we give so much money away to other needy nations, countries that are in need. So that is absolute positive. We give a lot of humanitarian aid. We give a lot of philanthropy all over the world. So we're very generous with the money we have. And my favorite data point, pet care. In the United States, we spend so much money on pet care. and taking care of our pets. We have a lot of people that have pets as their fur babies. That's the only kids they plan on having, and so we spend a ton of money, which I think is great because I love animals. So there are some data points that you just are objectively positive, like having a lot of wealth and humanitarian, and to me, pet care. But then there are other data points that are objectively not good and also make the United States exceptional. For example, healthcare is a major one. Most countries in the world, most advanced nations especially, have some sort of universal health coverage. That makes it so the people in the population can get health coverage, and it is not going to bankrupt them. The United States is the one exception. We do have universal health coverage, but it's only if you're 65 years or older. So we have socialized medicine, as much as people hate that term. We have socialized medicine, but only for senior citizens. So for everyone else, you're on your own. You're going to have to pay whatever it costs. So some people would say, well, this is a good thing because having universal health coverage or socialized medicine is a bad thing, but we also spend way more because it is completely a for-profit part of the economy. The healthcare system is not meant to make us better. It's to make a profit for insurance companies, for doctors, hospitals, investors. And so inevitably, we pay more in healthcare costs than any other nation in the world, and it is not even close. Healthcare costs in the United States are so enormous that it outpaces the world average. It's more than double the world average. And there's no country that comes even close to how much we spend. And you might be thinking, oh, good. We're spending so much because we're so healthy, and we are not so healthy. The United States ranks incredibly low in terms of health outcomes. We handle emergencies well. If you have to deal with a healthcare emergency, you want to come to the United States because we have some of the best doctors and some of the best things for emergency care. But in order just to stay alive or stay healthy for a long term, the United States ranks incredibly, incredibly low. And those two things going together make the United States a massive, massive outlier. We spend the most, and yet our health outcomes are incredibly low. That is why the United States is the only advanced industrialized nation in which citizens are allowed to go bankrupt just to stay alive. The number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States is healthcare costs. And half the people that go bankrupt because of healthcare costs have insurance. I can say from personal experience, even with good health insurance, healthcare costs are so unreasonably high that you have to pick and choose which doctors you're going to go to. It is a broken system, and everyone knows it's broken. The United States is also one of very, very few nations that does not have national maternity leave. It's something like 5 or 6 nations in the world that do not have guaranteed maternity leave. Now, some people would say, well, yes, but like 80% of women have maternity leave. And a lot of women do, but it is totally up to their employer. And it varies wildly. Some places it's like 2 days, some places it's a week. And there's no national mandate. Companies can say they are not going to give any maternity leave. So if you look at the other countries that do not have maternity leave also, a lot of them you haven't even heard of. They're all third world countries. So it is unheard of in the developed world to not have national maternity leave, and yet the United States is one of those nations. We also have far more guns than anywhere else in the world, and it is not even close. for every 100 citizens in the United States, we have about 120 guns owned by private citizens. The second highest is Yemen with about 52. So we have more than double the amount of guns than the next highest country. And so it is a huge, huge distance. We have a ton of guns. And I'm not anti-gun. I have a 16-gauge Winchester slide action I got as a gift when I became an Eagle Scout. So I'm not in any way, shape, or form against guns. But the fact is we have way more guns than any other nation by far. And that does not mean we're safer. We have, especially when you compare the United States to other advanced nations, and especially other advanced democracies, the homicide rate is enormously higher than any other country. Because very obviously, the more guns, the more gun deaths are going to happen. There are some third world countries that have higher homicide rates, but we don't want to compare ourselves to third world countries. That is, we want to compare ourselves to other advanced industrialized nations. So the homicide rate with firearms is enormous in the United States. And it's just because we have so many guns. The number of mass shootings per country, obviously, the United States far outranks all other advanced nations, and it is not even close. Also, the United States has more serial killers by country, and it is also huge, huge gap. Now, with this statistic, what you will hear a lot of people say is, well, all that means is the United States catches more serial killers. And there could be other places that have more serial killers that we don't know about, but those are not advanced industrialized nations. Compared to other nations that have a criminal justice system and a legal system and are advanced, the United States has way more than them, and that's not a matter of record keeping or just better policing. There very well could be third world countries that have more serial killers, but they're probably not serial killers. They're probably political violence or war. Serial killers are distinctly different in that it's a specific type of killing. So we have way more serial killers than anywhere else in the world. And again, it's not even close. We also have more incarcerated citizens than anywhere else in the world, and the gap is enormous, especially when you compare it to other advanced industrialized nations. Our prison population is gigantic. And you might be thinking, oh good, we are keeping ourselves safe by incarcerating a lot of people. And obviously, based on the previous statistic, that is just not true. But also, we spend a lot of money on prisoners. We have so many prisoners, way more than any other country in the world, and we spend about $65,000 per prisoner per year on average in the United States. That is $65,000 per prisoner per year. That is getting close to the national average for what people make median household income. That's per inmate. So that is a lot of money being spent on each inmate, especially when you consider per student, we spend about $15,000, $15,500 per student on average in the United States. So we're spending about 4 times more per prisoner than we are to educate our population and to give them school lunches and get them through school and give them a good education. So the gap is enormous. Our education spending is incredibly low compared to the prison population spending. And yet we also have some of the highest college tuition in the world. We make college students pay vastly more than most places in the world. And we have historically, since the end of World War II, we have had the best higher education system in the world. A lot of Germany used to have a great one, but then the Nazis forced out a lot of the intellectuals, and especially Jewish intellectuals who came to the United States, and that is what helped build the U.S. education system. There's tons of federal money going towards it, paying towards space race during the Cold War, and also all of the intellectuals fleeing Europe after World War II and come to the United States. And yet the United States is now on the decline in terms of education. We may spend a lot more than other countries, but we actually rank incredibly low for how much we spend in terms of math, science, and reading. 2022 is somewhere in the neighborhood of 18. We're 18th, but for how much the U.S. spends, it is insane that we would rank that low. So, all of these random data points that I just gave you, what explains them? What is it about American culture that could explain all those random data points? And all of them come back to one concept that we will come back to in this course. The United States is the most individualistic country in the world. And there's ways individualism is measured. It's the opposite of individualism is collectivism, doing what's good for the collective whole. In individualistic societies, they believe that the individual is of paramount importance. Individual happiness, what they desire, what they want, and being able to pursue their goals without any restrictions, especially by the government, is the height of human civilization. And I will argue all day that individualism overall is a good thing. But in the United States, we sometimes take it too far. And it's not like it's constant. We go through periods where we are a little more collectivistic, but we are fundamentally an individualistic nation. And again, it has a lot of good things that come with it. Independence, autonomy, uniqueness, self-sufficiency. But it comes with some very bad things also. Well, some objectively bad things, serial killers. I have a desire to cause a lot of harm to other people for my own self-gratification. That is the height of selfishness, the height of individualism, or the low point of individualism. Why is it that the United States has so many prisoners and we spend so much on the prison population? It's because prisons are a for-profit institution. And they make a lot of money. They're making some individuals incredibly wealthy. And those individuals have a lot of sway in Congress. And so they block legislation that would decrease the amount of money, or decrease the amount of the prison population, and decrease the amount of money spent towards prisoners. So they actually are in a very powerful lobby in Congress. That's also why we don't have national paternity leave. How dare you tell a company what they're going to do with their employees? That's why healthcare costs are so high. How dare you tell a company not to make as much profit as they can off of penicillin or some sort of some medication that's going to keep you alive. All those data points I explained, they all come back to individualism. The fact that we're the wealthiest nation in human history is because we are very good at pursuing money. That is America's. People think football is America's pastime. It is not. It's making money. That's why we tend to be so good at it in this country. That is what America is about. Individualism. And because the United States is the most economically and militarily powerful country the world has ever seen. And it's been the most economically powerful since the 1870s and the most undisputed militarily powerful since 1945. The United States has spread its culture all over the world. So even if you're not from the United States, American culture has seeped into all of society all over the world. And the rest of the world has experienced American culture. So, what I can guarantee you from this class, if you stick with it, by the end of it, you will know more about the United States. You will know more about the world because you know more about the United States. You will obviously know more about the past since we're studying history. But in order to understand the present, you must understand the past. So you will understand more about the present. And when you understand those four things, I can guarantee you, by the end of this course, you will have a better understanding of yourself. Stay in this course, finish all the assignments, and I promise you it will be worthwhile in the end. I'm really excited to be working with you, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful semester with you.